applying advanced AI models, specifically these large language models, to really complex domain-specific fields like medicine.
Mm.
It's one of the most exciting challenges, honestly, and critical, too, for anyone working in AI and ML right now.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about taking these incredibly powerful, general-purpose systems
Right.
and making them deeply knowledgeable, fluent in, like, the language of radiology reports or the subtle patterns you see in histopathology images.
Yeah, and patient dialogues, too. It's a whole different world.
Okay.
And for anyone already, deep in AI and ML, watching how we adapt and push multimodal AI into areas like this, where precision, reliability, they're just non-negotiable, that's seeing the real cutting edge.
It really is.
These general MLLMs, they're amazing, sure.
Yeah.
They understand text, images in broad contexts. But drop them into medicine.
And they hit a wall.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You run into these big gaps. They need that deep, nuanced medical knowledge, the ability to interpret highly specialized visuals, stuff they just weren't built for, out of the box.
They struggle with the subtleties.
Yeah, the specific terminology, the sheer volume of domain knowledge needed, it's often just missing.
And tackling those gaps, that's exactly what we're getting into today on AI peer review.
Good stuff.
We're going to unpack an interesting paper that really zeroes in on this specific challenge. It presents a new medical multimodal large language model, an MLLM they call Lingshu.
Lingshu, okay.
What's really grabbed me about this work is it's not just, tweaking an existing model. They lay out this unique, comprehensive approach, covers everything from, like, how they curated their data.
Which is huge in medicine.
Right. To a novel multi-stage training process, and even a new evaluation framework built just for the medical domain.
That evaluation piece is critical, too. Apples-to-apples comparisons are tough.
Definitely.
And their mission, based on what you said, sounds pretty ambitious. They want to fundamentally adapt these general models for medicine, but by integrating specialized data in a way that goes beyond just, like, distilling knowledge from proprietary systems.
Yeah. Exactly. Which has been common. Right. But it's its own issues.
Oh, yeah. Data availability, potential biases creeping in from the source model. It's tricky. They seem to be aiming for a more robust, open foundation.
So our mission for this deep dive, really get into the technical weeds of this paper. We want to understand the nuts and bolts, how Lingshu was actually built and tested.
Okay.
Why is their data strategy different? What's involved in this multi-stage training, step by step? And crucially, what did they actually achieve? According to their own evaluation, what are its capabilities?
Sounds like a plan. Let's do it.
We'll unpack all of that for you.
All right, so the paper makes it crystal clear, and it's something we see all the time. Building a robust medical MLLM, or even just adapting one significantly.
Yeah.
It really starts and ends with the data.
No way around it.
Nope. These specialized medical tasks, they absolutely demand extensive, high-quality, diverse, domain-specific knowledge. Your general MLLMs, powerful as they are, just don't have that depth.
Their training data is what the general internet?
Pretty much. Not the, the vast, complex landscape of medical journals, imaging archives, clinical notes. It's a different universe.
Right. So they knew, okay, we have to fix this data problem first. How did they actually approach building this massive, specialized medical data set?
Well, they outlined two main strategies, which are really central to their whole method. First, comprehensive collection from diverse existing sources. And second, high-quality synthesis of new targeted data.
Collection and synthesis.
Exactly. The paper mentions Figure 2 illustrates this whole pipeline, showing the flow from raw data all the way to the final process training samples.
Okay, so describing what's in that figure, the collection part, casting a wide net, you said.
Yeah, exactly. They pulled together a huge amount of existing medical multimodal data. Think standard image-text pairs, like an image with a caption describing it.
Like figure captions from paper?
Precisely, but also multimodal instruction data, things like question-answering pairs linked to an image-visual question answering or VQA, or instructions to generate a report based on an image.
Okay, so task-oriented data, too. Can you give us a feel for the specific data sets they use? What kind of medical data are we talking about?
Sure. They really aimed for breadth. They list data sets like PMCOA, that's figure caption pairs from open access biomedical literature, ROCO, another one with radiology images and captions. Okay. Then there's ELA-VMed, which provides medical VQA instruction data, MIMEC, CXR, that's a big one, chest x-rays with radiology reports.
Very widely used.
Definitely. PathVQA for pathology images, VQA-Med for more general medical VQA. The goal here was clearly to expose the model early on to a wide range of medical image types and task formats, build that foundational understanding.
Okay, so a solid base of established medical data sets. But here's something I found really interesting, and they highlighted too. They didn't just use medical data.
Right.
They specifically included general domain, multimodal, and text data, stuff like Elevate 1.5, Alava, OpenHerbeast 2.5 for text, Pixmo. Why? Why mix general data into a medical model's training diet?
That's a really key insight from their work, actually. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about real clinical data.
How so?
Well, first, including general data helps preserve the base model's general capabilities. You need that. Medical reports aren't just jargon. There's plenty of normal language.
Sure.
But maybe more importantly, that general multimodal data introduces the model to diverse visual formats beyond just medical scans. Think charts, tables, graphs, scientific diagrams, things often embedded right in medical papers or reports.
Ah, okay. Like lab results in a table or maybe physiological curves.
Exactly. Learning from general data helps the model develop the visual literacy to parse and understand those non-image formats when it sees them in a medical context. It's crucial for interpreting structured data.
That makes perfect sense. You need a model that can read the blood pressure chart and the chest x-ray, not just one or the other.
Precisely.
And alongside that multimodal data, they also pulled in extensive medical text data. You mentioned MedQuad, Medical R1 distilled data, adding another layer of pure domain knowledge.
Absolutely. Now, anyone who's worked with open source data, especially scrape data, knows it can be, well, messy.
Understatement of the year.
Right. Noise, low-res images, tons of redundancy. So a really rigorous data cleaning process wasn't just a nice to have. It was essential for building a high-quality training set.
Okay, so how did they tackle the cleaning? For the multimodal data, they mentioned a three-stage pipeline.
Yeah. Stage one was basic image filtering, simple but necessary. Toss out images smaller than 64 pixels on either side. Gets rid of tiny, uninformative stuff.
Standard procedure. What about duplicates? That can really skew training.
Critical step, that was stage two. Image deduplication. They used perceptual hashing to find visually identical images, and they were strict a hamming distance of 0.
So only exact visual duplicates based on the hash.
Exactly. Ensures the model isn't just memorizing the same image over and over. They mention using a chunk-based technique to speed this up, which makes sense given the scale.
Practical considerations. And after image cleaning.
Stage 3 was text filtering. Again, simple checks like removing captions shorter than 10 words, likely just boilerplate or noise.
Okay, image filtering, deduplication, text filtering. Makes sense. They also mentioned some model-based response cleaning, particularly for things like patient-doctor dialogue data.
Yes, that's interesting. Using AI to help clean the data itself. The appendix mentions using prompts designed to guide a model, probably a powerful LLM, to rewrite or filter dialogue text. The goal was to get an empathetic healthcare agent kind of tone,
Okay.
but, and this is crucial, explicitly telling it not to generate actual diagnoses or medical advice. Maintaining that safety boundary is paramount.
Absolutely essential. You don't want your training data teaching the model to play doctor irresponsibly.
Exactly. So beyond just cleaning existing data, they put a huge emphasis on data synthesis.
Generating new data. Why?
Yeah.
Not enough good stuff out there.
Partly that, but it was also about generating targeted synthetic data. Data specifically designed to strengthen capabilities that might be rare or underrepresented in public data sets. Things they really wanted the model to be good at.
Like engineering specific skills into it. What kinds of capabilities were they targeting?
Several key types. One was generating long-form captions. The idea was to push the model beyond simple descriptions, towards extracting more detailed diagnostic insights from images.
More interpretation, less just labeling.
Right. They also generated OCR-based instruction data. This was specifically to boost text recognition within medical images. Think labels, measurements, annotations that are often critical but tricky for standard OCR.
Oh yeah, text on complex backgrounds, that's hard.
Definitely. And crucially, they synthesized a lot of VQA samples, question-answer pairs, focused on specific medical tasks like diagnosis, identifying anatomy, or classifying the image modality itself.
How did they create those VQA samples? Just have a model dream them up?
They used two main strategies, kind of balancing control and creativity. First was a template-based method. Okay.
This used existing human-annotated metadata from some data sets, things like abnormality labels, anatomy tags. They designed question templates around these labels. Figure 4 gives an example. Take a brain MRI labeled tumor class X, use a template like what abnormality is here, and the ground truth is tumor class X.
Ah, so leveraging existing annotations to create structured questions.
Exactly.
Hmm.
You can generate lots of specific grounded questions this way. They could even generate distractors from the possible label space, very controlled.
Seems efficient. What was the second strategy?
The second was a self-instruct approach. Here, they used a powerful proprietary model, GPT-4o.
Interesting. Using a closed model to help build an open one.
Yeah. They prompted GPT-4o with a few examples from open-source VQA datasets and asked it to generate new, diverse VQA samples based on their image caption pairs. The goal here was more about question variety and linguistic diversity. Appendix A2, Table 12 shows the prompt structure.
Okay, but using GPT-4o, doesn't that bring risks, like
Yeah.
generating plausible but incorrect medical information, hallucinations? That is the absolute critical question here. Yes, it introduces risk. Generating incorrect medical facts is dangerous. That's why they emphasize that all the synthesized data, including what they call distilled reasoning trajectories, basically, synthetic chain of thought examples went through rigorous quality control.
QC is key.
Vitally important. The paper doesn't detail the entire QC process, but acknowledging it is crucial when you're using potentially fallible generative models for medical data synthesis.
Makes sense. So with all this collecting, cleaning, synthesizing,
Yeah.
what was the final scale? How much data do they actually end up using across the training stages?
The numbers are pretty big. Table 5 breaks it down. For stage 1, that shallow alignment, roughly 927,000 samples.
Okay.
Stage 2, deep alignment, that jumped to about 4.1 million samples.
Wow.
Stage 3, instruction tuning, that was the biggest chunk, around 7.1 million samples. Yeah. And finally, the reinforcement learning stage used about 65,000 curated QA samples. So you're looking at well over 12 million samples total across the main training phases. It shows a massive commitment to data scale and diversity.
That's a serious data set.
Ah.
Okay, so they've built this monster data set, cleaned, synthesized, diverse. How do they actually use it to build Lingshu? What's the model architecture, and what did the training process look like?
Right, so Lingshu isn't built entirely from scratch. It stands on the shoulders of a strong open source foundation, the Qwen 2.5 VL model architecture.
Quinn, okay, I know that one.
Yeah, it's already a capable multimodal model, has the standard components, a large language model, a vision encoder for images, and an MLP projector to kind of bridge the gap between vision and text features.
And they use different sizes.
Yep, they worked with both a 7 billion parameter version, Lingshu 7b, and a larger 32 billion parameter one, Lingshu 32b. And crucially, they chose the instruct versions of Qwen 2.5 VL as their starting point.
Why start with an instruct model specifically? What's the advantage?
Two main reasons they give. First, an instruct-tuned model already has some baseline ability to understand images and follow instructions from its original training. So theoretically, it needs less initial alignment data compared to starting from a raw base model.
Gets them a head start.
Kind of. And second, maybe more importantly for their pipeline, it means they could use instruction-formatted data effectively right from their very first specialized medical training stage. Fits their goal of building a model good at following complex medical commands.
Okay, makes sense. Let's unpack that training process then. It wasn't just one big training run, right? They describe a 4-stage continual training regimen. Figure 6 apparently shows this pipeline. Why break it down into stages?
It's about progressive refinement, a targeted learning approach. The first couple of stages are really focused on building a solid vision language foundation specifically for medical scenarios, making sure the model's vision and language parts are properly aligned to understand medical images and related text.
Okay, stage 1, medical shallow alignment. What's the goal there?
The main goal here is just establishing that initial effective alignment between all those diverse medical images and basic textual descriptions, laying the groundwork, teaching the model basic medical visual concepts linked to words.
How do they do it?
Method-wise, they keep the big language model frozen. Its general knowledge isn't changing yet. They only fine-tune the vision encoder and that MLT projector.
Focusing the learning.
Exactly. And it's just for one epoch, using that first batch of data, around 927K samples of coarsely annotated image caption pairs, mainly from PMC-OA and ROCO. It's efficient and zeroes in on that initial vision-text association for medicine.
So basically teaching the vision part to see medical stuff and link it to simple terms. Then stage 2, medical deep alignment. What changes?
Stage 2 builds right on stage 1. The goal now is much more comprehensive, integrating medical knowledge more deeply, adapting the model to understand various clinical contexts, finer details, and the big change, they unfreeze everything.
The LLM gets involved now.
Yep. LLM Vision encoder, projector, all parameters are unfrozen for end-to-end fine-tuning. This lets the language model start really integrating the visual information, which the vision part is now better at seeing, into its knowledge base. This stage also runs for 1 epoch.
And the data for stage 2 is different too. Bigger, you said.
Yeah, significantly larger, around 4.1 million samples, and importantly, described as higher quality, semantically richer image-text pairs. This includes datasets like ARC-OB2, Alava Med, plus their own synthesized long captions and VQA data, so more detailed descriptions, more complex tasks.
Okay. And crucially, they still included general image captions here,
Yeah.
even in the deep medical stage.
Yes, and this is a key strategic decision. Including those general captions here helps preserve the general multimodal skills the base model had, especially interpreting those charts, tables, illustrations we talked about.
So while stage 1 was purely medical images, stage 2 reinforces handling the mixed visual content you'd actually see in a clinic.
That seems to be the thinking, making it robust to real-world data that isn't just scans.
Makes sense. A truly useful model needs that flexibility. Okay, after these alignment stages, what's next? Stage 3.
Stage 3, medical instruction tuning. This is where the model really learns to follow complex commands and generate outputs in specific formats. The goal is refining that instruction-following capability across a broad spectrum of medical tasks, making sure its responses align with what a user might actually want in a clinical setting.
And how's the training setup here?
All parameters stay unfrozen, large-scale end-to-end optimization continues. And this stage runs for 2 epochs, which suggests it's a major focus of the training.
And the data for this stage was the biggest, over 7 million samples. What's in that mix?
Correct. It's a really diverse corpus, specifically designed to teach the model how to act like a medical assistant or knowledge base. It includes scenario-based queries covering diagnosis from images, clinical exam analysis, knowledge retrieval, report generation, anatomy localization, a wide range.
So lots of task-specific examples.
Yes, but also, and this comes back to their core strategy, they include carefully vetted, high-quality general domain data and more medical text data in this stage too.
Okay. General data and medical text reappear in stage 3. We talked about general multimodal, helping with charts and stuff. Why specifically add general text and more medical text here in the instruction tuning phase?
The paper really emphasizes this is strategic. Relying only on medical image text data, even lots of it, can create a bias towards visual information. Including general text and more medical text helps counterbalance that.
Broadens its perspective.
Exactly. Expands the model's conceptual scope beyond just what it sees. Helps it build a more holistic grasp of medical knowledge from text sources. That's essential for complex reasoning and generating detailed, coherent answers. This stage also includes more advanced formats, like multi-image inputs, multi-turn conversations, and prompts requiring detailed reasoning steps, like chain of thought.
That layering of different data types across the stages really seems central to their approach. I saw a note about a technical detail data packing. They used it in stage 3, but not 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's an interesting practical detail. Data packing is basically squishing multiple short training samples together into one longer sequence to speed up training. Reduces overhead per sample.
Makes sense for efficiency, so why only in stage 3?
They used it in stage 3 because instruction response pairs tend to be longer anyway, but they found it actually hurt performance in stages 1 and 2.
Hurt performance. Why?
Their hypothesis is that those early stages, especially stage 1 with short captions, had tons of very short text samples. If you pack those, you end up with lots of padding tokens between the real samples in a sequence. This can lead to sparse gradients during training.
Ah, the updates become less effective.
Potentially. They think this sparse gradient issue might have messed with the training dynamics and maybe prevented proper convergence, especially since packing reduces the total number of optimization steps. So they specifically avoided packing in the early alignment stages but found it fine and more efficient for the longer sequences in stage 3.
Fascinating. Shows how sensitive these training processes can be to the data characteristics. Okay, what's the final stage? Stage 4.
Stage 4, medical-oriented reinforcement learning, or RL. This is less common but adds another layer. The goal is to potentially fine-tune the model further based on specific task performance signals, not just predicting the next word. This results in the Lingshu RL variant.
How does that work?
They start with the Lingshu model from stage 3, then apply an RL algorithm called GRPO for 1 epoch.
And the data for RL, is it different again?
It uses curated QA datasets, about 65,000 samples, and these are specifically processed for RL. They mention converting multiple choice questions to open-ended ones sometimes to make the task harder. They also downsampled yes-no questions to avoid the model just learning a simple bias.
Smart. And the reward signal. How does it know if it did well?
Pretty standard setup. A small reward just for getting the output format right, and a larger reward 1.0 if the answer is actually correct. One technical detail they mention is reducing the max sequence length for this RL stage to 4096 tokens, shorter than previous stages. The reasoning: most medical QA answers are pretty short, so it's more efficient.
Right. So a really sophisticated four-stage pipeline. Shallow alignment, focusing on vision text links, deep alignment integrating knowledge and handling diverse visuals, massive instruction tuning with mixed data types for task execution, and then optional RL for performance optimization. It's a clear progression.
Definitely designed to build that foundation and then specialize. But, building the model is only half the story, especially in medicine. How do you actually measure if it's any good, reliably?
Exactly. Standardized evaluation is key. And the paper points out comparing existing models is often a mess. Inconsistent setups, private data sets, makes it hard to know who's really ahead.
Which is where their other big contribution comes in, MedEvalKit, a unified evaluation framework specifically for medical MLLMs.
They saw the need.
Absolutely, because effective evaluation here needs to be multidimensional. You've got to test medical knowledge, visual understanding, reasoning, the whole package.
And general evaluation frameworks aren't enough.
Often not. Things like LMMs, Eval, or Evil Harness just don't have enough medical data coverage, and they aren't always set up for the specific formats or nuances of medical tasks.
So MedEvalKit pulls together a bunch of established medical benchmarks into one consistent framework.
That's the idea, and it's pretty comprehensive. The benchmark within MedEvalKit uses over 152,000 evaluation samples, covering more than 121,000 distinct medical images, all drawn from 16 different existing benchmark datasets.
16 datasets. What kinds of tasks and data are covered? Figure 7 gives an overview. Table 25 lists them all.
It covers the main categories: multimodal QA, text-only QA to check pure knowledge, and medical report generation. The datasets include many well-known ones: VQA RAID, Slake, Path VQA, PMC VQA, OmniMed VQA, MMMU, the medical parts, MedExpert QA, MMLU, medical, PubNed QA, MedMC QA, MedQA USMLE, MedBullets, SuperGP QA. Those are mostly for the QA side.
Okay, a lot of question answering. What about report generation?
For that, they included MIAPC CXR, IUX-Ray, and CheckSpert Plus. So it's a really broad suite covering different tasks, image types, and difficulty levels, a solid representation of existing benchmarks.
And critically, they define specific prompting formats within MedEvalKit.
Yes, that's key for consistency. Specific prompt structures for multiple choice QA, open-ended QA, yes-no QA, report generation. Page 14 shows examples, ensures every model gets the exact same input structure for each task. Fair comparison.
And they use this framework to compare Lingshu against a range of other models.
Exactly. They evaluated other open-source medical MLLMs, leading general-purpose MLLMs, and importantly, top proprietary models like GPT 4.1, Claude Sonnet 4, and Gemini 2.5 Flash. Running all these comparisons within MedEvalKit's standardized environment is what allows for meaningful conclusions about relative performance.
That standardization is absolutely vital. So what metrics did they use inside MedEvalKit to actually score the models?
A mix of standard and domain-specific ones. For text generation tasks, the usual suspects: BLU, Meteor, Rugel, Cider, Spice. These look at things like anagram overlap, fluency, agreement with reference text. The appendix described them.
Okay, standard text metrics. Anything else?
They also used model-based metrics like BERT score, which uses embeddings to measure semantic similarity. That can capture meaning better than just word overlap, especially for complex things like medical reports.
Semantic similarity seems important here.
Definitely. And specifically for report generation, they brought in domain-specific metrics, rate, SEM, and RADCLI Q1. These are designed to better assess the clinical relevance and accuracy of generated radiology reports, potentially more meaningful than just text overlap.
Got it. I noticed they also mentioned future plans for evaluation metrics.
Yes, and that's an important nod to the field's current limits. They explicitly say we need to move beyond current metrics and introduce more medical-specific ones, things like C-index, maybe for outcome prediction, clinical efficacy scores, decision curve analysis, metrics tied more directly to real clinical utility.
Assessing actual impact, not just text quality.
Exactly. And critically, they highlight the need to integrate human expert evaluation. You really need doctors to look at these outputs to assess credibility and safety for real-world use.
Makes total sense. Okay, so they built the model using this careful data strategy in multi-stage training, and they created MedEval Kit to evaluate it rigorously. Let's get to the results. How did Lingshu actually do on the benchmarks?
All right, looking at Table 6, the medical multimodal VQA results. Lingshu 7B actually did surprisingly well. Despite being only 7 billion parameters, it outperforms several larger models. That suggests their training approach is pretty efficient.
That's impressive for the smaller model. What about the big one, Lingshu 32B?
Lingshu 32B really shone, achieving state-of-the-art results among all the open-source competitors on these VQA tasks. The paper specifically points out it beat intern VL338B, another big medical MLM, by an average of 3.4 percentage points, and it got the top score on 6 out of the 7 VQA benchmarks. Shows the approach scales well.
Okay, so leading the open source pack decisively. But the elephant in the room.
Hmm.
How did it compare to the big proprietary models? GPT-4, Claude, Gemini, the gold standard.
They're upfront about it. There's still a performance gap compared to those top-tier proprietary systems. Especially, they note, on tasks needing very deep clinical reasoning or tapping into the absolutely vast, often private knowledge those models are trained on.
So not quite matching them yet.
Not yet. Closing that gap is stated as a future goal. It's a fair assessment those models are huge and trained on unimaginable amounts of data.
Fair enough. SOTA among open source is still a big deal for the community. What about report generation? That seemed like a key task. Table 8 has those results.
Report generation looks like a real standout strength for Lingshu. Table 8 shows even Lingshu 7B got impressive scores across multiple metrics, Rugel, CIDR, and those clinical ones like rate, SEM, Radically Q1. On some metrics, it even matched or beat the proprietary models and significantly outperformed other open source ones.
Generating good reports automatically, that could be huge clinically.
Potentially massive time saver, yeah. If it's reliable. This performance suggests it's a very promising capability for Lingshu.
Definitely. They also did an ablation study, right? Taking pieces out to see what mattered most.
Yes, focusing on the data composition in Stage 3, the instruction tuning part. Table 10 shows these results. The goal, like you said, is understanding the impact of the different data types they mixed into that huge 7.1 million sample corpus.
And what did they find? What happens when you remove stuff?
The big takeaway: their diverse data strategy was absolutely validated. Removing any major data category, medical multimodal, general text, or medical text hurt performance, everything mattered.
So no single silver bullet. The mix is key.
Exactly. Removing the medical multimodal data caused big drops on several visual benchmarks like MMMU-Med and VQA RADE, confirming its foundational role.
Makes sense. What about the general data? Did removing that hurt too?
It did. Removing general multimodal and general text data also led to performance decreases. This directly backs up their idea that supplementing with general knowledge is effective. Removing their synthetic data also caused noticeable drops, especially on OmniMed VQA, showing their targeted generation worked. And removing the COT text, those reasoning examples, also hurt, particularly on reasoning-heavy benchmarks.
Wow. So it really seems like every component, the collection, the synthesis, the general data contributed meaningfully. Any other specific nuggets from the ablation?
They noted that keeping high-quality medical captions in Stage 3, even though they were used earlier, was still important. Suggests detailed descriptions remain valuable context, and they confirmed skipping Stages 1 and 2 entirely, just doing instruction tuning, led to performance drops. That early alignment really is critical. The whole study strongly reinforces their main hypothesis. You need this integrated approach with diverse data types for comprehensive medical AI.
Beyond the overall scores, did they look at performance across different types of medical images? Like, was it better at X-rays than MRIs or vice versa?
They did analyze performance across 8 different modalities covered by MedEval Kit. It wasn't perfectly uniform. Lingshu showed particular strength, leading performance compared to competitors in microscopy, MRI, dermoscopy, and OCT.
Interesting. What's common about those?
They often require picking up very fine microtextures, microscopy, dermoscopy, OCT, or understanding complex anatomical structures, MRI, OCT. This suggests Lingshu got particularly good at capturing both high-frequency details and anatomical patterns.
Like a high-resolution specialist in those areas.
Kind of, yeah. It also did well on ultrasound and fundus photography, handling things like speckle noise or fine blood vessels. They did note it trailed slightly behind the top proprietary models, specifically in CT and X-ray.
Oh, okay. Room for improvement there.
Exactly. They frame it as targeted opportunities. Overall, they see Lingshu as modality agnostic in design, but demonstrating these specialist capabilities, often beating larger models in those detail-rich modalities.
Okay. And the last big question for these models, data volume. Did more data always equal better performance? What did the scaling analysis show? Figure 10 illustrates this.
Yeah, Figure 10 shows a pretty classic scaling curve pattern. Accuracy jumps up sharply with the initial data, big gains early on. Then it keeps climbing, but with diminishing returns. Eventually, it starts to plateau as the model kind of saturates what it can learn from that data or task.
So more data helps, but not infinitely.
Right. The aggregate plot they show goes from roughly 52% accuracy with less data up to about 62% with the full set on average. They also saw differences between tasks. Image-focused tasks seem to plateau earlier than more knowledge-heavy ones like MedExpert QA, which kept improving with more data.
What's the main takeaway from that?
Large-scale data is absolutely crucial, no doubt. You need a lot of it. But the plateau suggests just piling on more of the same data might not be the answer moving forward. Future progress might depend more on better data richer, more complex, better annotated, or on architectural innovations to learn more efficiently.
Quality over sheer quantity eventually. Makes sense. Okay, we've covered the data, the training, the evaluation, the results. Let's make this more concrete. How does Lingshu actually work in practice? Let's look at those case studies they included. Figures 11, 12, 13 show some examples, often using Lingshu 32B.
Right. These case studies really bring the capabilities to life. Figure 11 shows visual question answering across different modalities.
Let's pick a couple from there. Maybe that MRI of the lumbar spine and the chest x-ray example. For the MRI, the question was, what can be seen? How did Lingshu answer?
Its response, detailed in the figure, follows a really nice logical flow. First, identifies the image, MRI, lumbar spine, then identifies key anatomy, spinal canal, vertebrae, muscles, discs. Then zeroes in on the abnormality, notes the herniated disc material, explicitly says it's compressing the cool sac, and concludes lumbar disc herniation. The paper points out the systematic process mirrors how a clinician might look at it.
That step-by-step reasoning is really valuable for transparency. And the chest x-ray from figure 11, question was about abnormalities.
Again, systematic process, checks image quality for standard practice, then systematically reviews the key areas, lungs, heart size, bones, fractures, diaphragm, costophrenic angles, fluid, like a checklist.
Following a radiologist's workflow almost.
Pretty much. And based on that comprehensive check, it concludes no abnormality seen. The paper highlights that the structured inspection order is very similar to how radiologists work, suggesting clinically grounded reasoning.
That's impressive. Not just right, but reasoning in a familiar way.
Yeah.
Figure 12 had that direct comparison on medical diagnosis, right?
Yeah, that was insightful. Comparing Lingshu and intern VL3 on diagnosing an OCT eye scan, the image showed clear signs of macular edema elevation, cystoid spaces.
How did Lingshu handle it?
Its reasoning was quite nuanced. It saw the macular elevation, but then critically, it considered differential diagnoses. What else could cause this? It listed macular edema and macular hole. Then it incorporated the other visual evidence, subretinal fluid, those cystoid spaces. Integrating all that led it to the correct answer, macular edema. It showed that clinical thinking, consider possibilities, gather all evidence.
And intern VLO3 in that case?
A stark contrast, according to the paper. Intern VL3 apparently jumped to the wrong conclusion, macular hole, and did so with high confidence, without seemingly weighing alternatives or fully using all the visual cues like the cystoid spaces. The paper uses this to argue Lingshu has a more cautious, grounded, and dependable diagnostic approach, at least in this example.
That caution is so important for medical AI safety. Okay, beyond image diagnosis, what about pure medical knowledge? Figure 13 had that synapse diagram.
Right, a complex biological illustration. The task was, explain the process as shown and identify the type of synapse.
How did Lingshu do?
Really well. It correctly explained the neurotransmitter release, binding, reuptake, but crucially, it went further and correctly identified it as a noradrenergic synapse, which requires linking the visual details to stored knowledge about neurotransmitters and receptors.
And the base model, Quinn 2.5 VL, couldn't do that.
Not even close. The original model could describe some visual elements but completely failed to classify the synapse type. And worse, it apparently hallucinated, describing a red part in a black and white diagram.
Wow.
It's a strong contrast. Shows Lingshu's training gave it real domain mastery, reduced hallucination, increased reliability on specialized knowledge tasks.
Seems that diverse data really paid off there. Did they show it handling anything beyond images and diagrams, like numerical data?
Briefly, yeah. Page 24 mentions a public health example, calculating attributable risk from a data table. It suggests the model could process the structured quantitative data in the table and perform the necessary calculations. Shows it can handle that mix of formats.
Good. And what about simulating dialogue? Like talking to a patient?
Figure 16 is referenced for that. They describe Lingshu being able to interpret patient-like questions, suggest potential diagnoses or specialties, maybe recommend tests. It's framed as promising for clinical assistance, maybe initial triage or info provision, but they didn't show detailed dialogue examples in the main text.
Okay, so it demonstrates a pretty wide range of skills. Nuanced visual interpretation, cautious diagnosis, deep medical knowledge, handling quantitative data, even potential for dialogue, clearly powerful progress. But like all research, it's not perfect. What limitations did they acknowledge?
They were commendably realistic. Several key limitations. Data quality and diversity is still a huge one. Even with their efforts, open source medical data has noise, resolution issues, uneven distribution.
The raw material is still imperfect.
Exactly. And using proprietary models for synthesis, while helpful, carries that risk of baking in hallucinations or biases, even with QC. Plus, scaling up expert medical validation for data and outputs. That's incredibly resource-intensive, but vital.
So data challenges persist. What else?
Model performance and generalization. They restate that Lingshu, while SOTA for open source, still lags behind the very top proprietary models, especially on deep clinical reasoning. And they need to test it more broadly to see how well it generalizes beyond their specific evaluation set.
Fair point. And the training method itself.
They admit the exact data mix and training setup might not be perfectly optimal, and their initial exploration with RL in stage 4 didn't have a massive impact on benchmarks, suggesting more work is needed to figure out how to apply RL effectively in medicine, maybe better reward signals or different algorithms.
It's good they're upfront. So based on these limits, what's their plan? Where do they see future work heading?
It aligns pretty directly. First, high-quality medical data construction, a huge focus. They need more diverse, enriched, high-quality data sets. They talk about building better systems for generation and QC, maybe specialized AI models just for assessing data quality, more fine-grained synthesis pipelines, and definitely human-in-the-loop mechanisms for refinement.
Improving the data process, not just getting more volume.
Precisely. Quality and targeting. Second, more comprehensive medical multimodal benchmarking. Current benchmarks are good, but don't fully capture real clinical complexity. They need benchmarks better aligned with actual applications, citing things like HealthBench as inspiration.
And expanding the model itself, handling trickier data types.
Yes, model expansion is key, extending Lingshu to natively handle things beyond standard 2D images video, like whole slide imaging, WSI, those huge pathology slides, or full 3D volumes from CT/MRI, not just slices, even integrating omics, data genomics, proteomics.
Why native support? Why not just adapt?
Because adapting often loses information. For WSI or 3D scans, you lose resolution or spatial context. Native support lets the model potentially capture those subtle high-res details or volumetric relationships, crucial for diagnosis in those modalities.
Big technical lift, integrating those fundamentally different data types.
Huge. And finally, back to evaluation. They stress again the need for those medical-specific metrics, C-index, efficacy scores, decision curve analysis to measure real clinical utility, and formally integrating human expert evaluation into benchmarking for credibility and safety.
Sounds like a clear, ambitious roadmap.
It is. Their broader plan involves continuous improvement via data and benchmarks, exploring better post-training, maybe scaling up, optimizing for specific applications like report generation or diagnosis, expanding language support, and eventually building efficient, task-oriented agent systems for clinical workflows.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive on Lingshu. The key achievement seems to be leveraging this really diverse data collection and synthesis approach, combined with that careful multi-stage training, to create a seriously strong open-source medical MLLM.
Yeah, and the strengths really came through in their evaluation using MedVelkit. SOTA among open source on multimodal VQA, particularly strong report generation, nuanced diagnostic reasoning, domain mastery of medical knowledge, and effectiveness across various modalities, especially the detail-rich ones.
And MedVelkit itself is a valuable contribution, pushing towards that much-needed standardized evaluation.
Absolutely essential for the field. And it's clear from their own limitations and future plans that while Lingshu is a big step, this whole area is moving incredibly fast.
It really makes you wonder. We see models like Lingshu making such strides in handling complex medical data, even mimicking clinical reasoning and being open source. What's going to be the biggest remaining hurdle for these medical MLMs to actually get widespread, trusted use in real clinics? Is it still the technical capability? Is it getting enough high-quality data, navigating the regulatory maze, or is it that fundamental human challenge? Integrating AI smoothly into how doctors work and building trust with both clinicians and patients. Something for all of us working in AI and ML to chew on.
Definitely a lot to think about there.